Adaobi and Ebuka were the epitome of the perfect couple in Onitsha. From the outside, they seemed like they had everything anyone could dream of: love, success, and a bright future ahead. Their love story was one that everyone envied. It all started years ago when they met at a family gathering, and their connection was instant. Ebuka, charming and attentive, always made Adaobi feel like the center of his world. Adaobi, beautiful and intelligent, brought warmth to his life that he could never forget. When the two decided to get married, it was nothing short of a fairy tale. The entire town buzzed with excitement as the wedding approached. It was a grand affair, the kind of wedding that seemed to come straight out of a movie. The venue was stunning, decorated with flowers in every shade of pink, and the air was filled with the sweet sound of traditional music. Friends and family gathered to celebrate their love, and the joy was palpable. Adaobi walked down the aisle, her smile radiant, and Ebuka stood waiting, looking like the luckiest man alive. Their vows were heartfelt, promises of forever spoken under the bright lights, and every moment seemed perfect. It wasn't just a wedding, it was an event that brought the whole community together, a day that would forever be etched in the memories of everyone who attended. But little did anyone know, behind the beautiful pictures and the smiles, things weren't as perfect as they seemed. The future that everyone dreamed for them would soon begin to crumble in ways no one could have imagined. At first, everything felt like a dream. After their beautiful wedding, Adaobi and Ebuka settled into their new life with so much excitement. When Adaobi found out she was pregnant, she was overjoyed. She couldn't wait to tell Ebuka. His face lit up when she gave him the news, and he hugged her tightly, whispering that she was going to be the best mother. In those early weeks, he was caring, always asking how she felt, bringing her food, rubbing her feet. She felt loved, safe, and sure that she had chosen the right man to build a life with. But by the 3rd month, something started to change. It wasn't obvious at first, just small things. Ebuka started coming home later than usual. He said work was stressful, and she believed him. But then the late-night calls began. He would step outside or into the other room to answer them, always lowering his voice. When she asked who it was, he would smile and say, "Just business." But the smile didn't reach his eyes anymore. Dinners became quiet. He hardly looked at her when they sat together. Sometimes he didn't touch his food. She tried to start conversations, tried to ask about his day, but his answers were short and cold. "I'm tired." It was fine. Nothing much happened. It felt like he was drifting away, and no matter how much she tried to reach him, he kept pulling further. One night, she placed his hand on her growing belly and said, "Can you feel the baby? It's starting to move." But he didn't even look up from his phone. "That's nice," he muttered, scrolling through something that seemed more important than her or the life growing inside her. She cried quietly that night, lying beside him while he snored peacefully, unaware, or maybe uncaring, of her pain. She told herself it was just stress. Maybe he was overwhelmed. Maybe the pregnancy was making her too emotional. She didn't want to believe something was wrong, but deep down, she felt it. A mother's heart always knows. The love they once shared now felt like a memory. The warm laughter, the long talks, the gentle touches. They were slowly disappearing, replaced by distance and silence. And for the first time, Adaobi felt truly alone, even though the man she loved was still sleeping right next to her. It was just a normal evening, or at least, that's what Adaobi told herself. Ebuka had come home late again. He barely said a word to her, only muttered something about being tired, and went straight to take a shower. Adaobi sat on the bed, trying not to feel hurt. The house was too quiet, and the only sound was the running water from the bathroom. She looked around the room, hoping to distract herself from the heavy feeling in her chest. Then she saw it. A phone she had never seen before, sitting on the edge of the dresser. It wasn't his usual phone. Her heart skipped a beat. Why would he have a second phone? She stared at it, unsure what to do. Maybe it was for work. Maybe it wasn't even his. Her thoughts raced. But then, the screen lit up. A message flashed across the screen, clear and cruel. "Our baby kicked today." Her whole body froze. Time seemed to stop. Her hands began to shake, and she couldn't breathe for a second. The message didn't come from a friend or family. It came from a woman. Another woman, and she was pregnant too. Adaobi felt the blood drain from her face. The phone buzzed again. Another message followed. "Wish you were here to feel it." Her heart shattered. Her fingers trembled as she backed away from the phone like it was something poisonous. She didn't need to see more. That one message had said enough. Tears filled her eyes, but she bit her lip to stop herself from crying out loud. She didn't want him to hear. Not yet. Not until she could think. Not until she could breathe again. She sat on the edge of the bed, holding her belly protectively, whispering softly to her unborn child. "I'm so sorry, baby. I didn't know. I didn't know." Her mind went wild with questions. How long had this been going on? Who was the other woman? Was this the reason he had been so distant, so cold, so different? Was he living two lives? And worst of all, did he even want their baby? When Ibuka came out of the shower minutes later, wrapped in a towel, he didn't notice the storm inside her. He didn't see her red eyes or the way her lips trembled. He picked up the second phone casually, like it was nothing. He smiled at the screen for a split second before turning it off and slipping it into his bag. Adaobi watched him silently, her heart breaking in slow motion. She didn't say a word, not yet, but everything had changed. That one message had opened a door she couldn't close again, and now nothing would ever be the same. Adaobi couldn't sleep that night. Her mind kept replaying the message. "Our baby kicked today." The words haunted her. She lay awake, holding her belly, feeling her own baby move gently inside her. She had to know the truth. She needed answers, and she couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. The next morning, she waited for the right moment. Her heart was pounding, her hands sweating. When Ibuka walked into the kitchen, dressed for work, she took a deep breath and said, "Ibuka, I saw your other phone last night." He froze for a second. Then, without even looking surprised, he asked coldly, "What phone?" "The one that lit up while you were in the shower," she said, her voice shaking. A message came in, from someone else. She said their baby kit. His face changed. First, a flicker of panic. Then, a hard, angry look. "You went through my things?" he snapped. "Are you spying on me now?" "I didn't touch anything," she said quickly. "I just saw the message." "Ibuka, what's going on? Please just tell me the truth." But instead of admitting anything, he raised his voice. "You're being paranoid, Adaobi. Pregnancy is making you act crazy. There's no other woman, okay? Stop making things up in your head." Her heart sank. He was lying. She could feel it. And worse, he was making it seem like she was the problem. "I'm not crazy," she whispered, tears rising in her eyes. "I saw it with my own eyes." Ibuka grabbed his bag angrily and walked to the door. "I don't have time for this nonsense. I'm late for work." "Nonsense?" she repeated, her voice breaking. "Ibuka, I'm your wife. I'm carrying your child." He didn't answer. He didn't look back. He just slammed the door and left. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything she had ever known. Adaobi stood in the middle of their kitchen, heartbroken and confused. Her legs felt weak. She slowly walked back to the bedroom, curled up on the bed, and let the tears fall. She cried for the man she used to know. She cried for the future she thought they would have. She cried for her baby, who deserved so much better than this mess. She didn't know what to do next. All she knew was that something inside her had changed. The trust was gone. The love felt distant. And even though she still wore her wedding ring, it no longer felt like it meant anything. That night, as the house sat quiet and empty, Adaobi cried herself to sleep, the sound of her sobs mixing with the silence Ibuka left behind. Days turned into weeks, and things only got worse. After the fight, Ibuka became colder, more distant. At first, he still came home at night, but late, always after she'd gone to bed. Sometimes, he wouldn't even bother to come back at all. No calls, no messages, no explanations, just silence. Adaobi waited every night, hoping to hear the sound of his key in the door. She left the porch light on, made dinner, and sat by the window like a woman waiting for her husband from war. But most nights, the food stayed untouched, and the house stayed quiet. Her belly was growing fast, and so was the loneliness. She tried to talk to him. She tried everything. Gentle texts, voice notes, even short love messages, hoping to remind him of the man he used to be. But most of the time, he didn't respond. And when he did, it was cold. "I'm busy. Stop stressing me. I'll come when I can." It hurt deeply. Her body was changing. Her emotions were heavy, and all she wanted was to feel safe, loved, and supported. But instead, she felt invisible. She was going through one of the most beautiful and vulnerable times of her life, and she was doing it alone. What made it worse was that no one really believed her. She opened up to her mother, but the response broke her heart. "Men go through stress too," her mum said. Give him time. Maybe you're just being too sensitive. Her friends told her to be patient, to pray, to stop thinking negative thoughts. Some even hinted that maybe she was pushing him away with her emotions. It felt like the whole world was blaming her for the way he was treating her. She stopped talking about it. She stopped complaining. She smiled when people asked how Ebuka was. He's fine, she'd lie. Busy with work, but inside, she was breaking. The worst part was pretending everything was okay, wearing her brightest dress to antenatal visits, posting happy photos online so no one would suspect, laughing when she wanted to scream, crying quietly in the shower so no one would hear. Sometimes she would sit in the baby's room, staring at the tiny clothes she had bought, wondering if her child would ever know a father's love. She placed her hands on her belly and whispered, "I'm trying, baby. I'm trying to be strong." Ebuka wasn't just absent from the house. He was absent from her heart. And slowly, Adaobi began to realize that she was truly alone in this journey. The love that once filled their home had disappeared, and no one seemed to see it but her. It was still dark outside when Adaobi felt the first sharp pain. She turned in bed, hoping it was just another cramp, but then she felt a warm gush between her legs. Her heart skipped. Her water had broken. The baby was coming. She sat up slowly, trying to stay calm, but fear crept in. Her hospital bag was ready by the door. She had packed and repacked it 100 times. But now that the moment was here, everything felt overwhelming. She reached for her phone and called Ebuka. No answer. She tried again and again. Still nothing. She sent him a message. "My water just broke. I need you." No reply. Adaobi sat on the edge of the bed, her breathing shaky. Another wave of pain hit her, stronger this time. She wiped her tears quickly, grabbed her bag, and called a taxi. As she sat in the back seat, holding her belly and praying, all she could think about was how alone she felt. This was supposed to be a moment they shared. He was supposed to hold her hand, tell her she was strong, tell her everything would be okay, but he wasn't there. He didn't even care enough to pick up the phone. At the hospital, the nurses rushed to help her. She was wheeled into the maternity ward and changed into her hospital gown. The contractions came harder and faster. The pain was unbearable. But even worse than the pain was the emptiness beside her. Every time the door opened, she hoped it was him. It never was. She screamed through the contractions, tears streaming down her face, not just from the pain in her body, but from the ache in her heart. Other women had their husbands beside them, holding their hands, whispering encouragement. She had no one, just white walls, cold equipment, and the sound of her own cries echoing in the room. When the nurse asked gently, "Where's your husband?" Adaobi just shook her head, unable to speak. She didn't want to explain. She didn't have the word. She was too tired to lie, too broken to pretend. Hours passed. Her body shook. She bit down on her lip to stop from screaming too loudly. At one point, she passed out from exhaustion, only to wake up again to more pain. Still no word from Ebuka. Finally, after what felt like forever, the doctor said it was time to push. She gripped the sides of the bed, dug deep into a strength she didn't know she had, and pushed through the pain, the fear, the loneliness. And in the middle of all that heartbreak, something beautiful happened. A baby's cry filled the room. Her baby, her little girl. Adaobi wept, holding her daughter close to her chest, whispering through her tears, "I'm here, baby. I'm here, and I will never leave you. Never." The room was quiet, except for the soft breathing of Adaobi's newborn daughter sleeping in her arms. Her tiny chest rose and fell, so peaceful, so innocent. Adaobi stared at her, still trying to believe that she was finally here. After all the pain, the waiting, the tears, she had made it, alone, but alive. Her body ached, and her eyes were swollen from crying, but she couldn't stop looking at her baby's face. She had never seen anything more perfect. A gentle knock came at the door, and a nurse stepped in with a warm smile. "Good morning, Mama. Just came to check on you," she said softly. Adaobi nodded, smiling weakly. The nurse adjusted the IV, asked if she needed more pain medicine, then looked down at the baby and smiled again. "What's her name?" the nurse asked. "Chisholm," Adaobi said, her voice barely above a whisper. "God is with me." The nurse's smile grew wider. "That's a beautiful name." There was a pause. Then, as if she'd been holding something in for a while, the nurse looked around, made sure no one else was nearby, and leaned closer. "Please, I don't mean to upset you," she said gently. "But is your husband's name Ebuka?" Adaobi froze. Her heart skipped. She looked up slowly, unsure if she had heard right. "Yes, she said cautiously. Why? The nurse, Nkechi, sighed, her face filled with regret. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I wouldn't have said anything, but when I saw you and heard the name on your file, it felt too familiar. She paused, then continued carefully. He was here last week, with another pregnant woman. They came for an appointment. He held her hand the whole time. They even joked about baby names. Adaobi felt like the air had been knocked out of her chest. She couldn't speak. Her arms tightened around her daughter protectively, as if trying to shield her from the truth. I didn't know he had a wife already, Nkechi added quickly, her voice soft and full of pity. I'm so sorry. Tears rushed to Adaobi's eyes. She blinked hard, trying to stay strong, trying not to break again. But how much more could a heart take? Everything she had feared was true. The message, the lies, the distance. It wasn't her imagination. It wasn't just stress. He was really living another life, loving another woman, waiting for another baby. And while she was begging him to come home, while she was crying into her pillow, while she was giving birth alone, he was with someone else. Adaobi didn't say anything. She just nodded slowly, lips pressed tightly together. Nkechi placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You're stronger than you think, she whispered. You've already done the hardest part. You brought life into this world, and that's something no one can take from you. As the nurse left the room, Adaobi stared at her baby girl again. Her tears fell silently, but in her heart, something was changing. A part of her had broken, yes, but another part was waking up, stronger, wiser, ready. The pain was unbearable. Adaobi screamed, her fingers gripping the hospital bed so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her body was on fire, shaking, pushing, fighting. Sweat poured down her face. She had never felt so much pain in her life, but she kept going. She had to, for the tiny life inside her, for the little one who didn't ask for any of this. There was no one holding her hand, no loving voice telling her she could do it, just nurses, doctors, and her own determination. She felt like she was breaking into pieces, her heart already shattered from all the lies, the silence, the loneliness. But she pushed through the pain, through the fear, through the betrayal. With every scream, she let out the weight of everything she had been carrying for months. And then, suddenly, the room filled with a different sound. A baby's cry, high, sharp, beautiful. Adaobi's eyes flew open, her breath caught in her throat. The doctor smiled, gently lifting the baby and placing her on Adaobi's chest. She looked down, and everything stopped. A tiny face, a wrinkled pink body, little hands that opened and closed like she was reaching for something. Adaobi stared at her, her tears now falling for a completely different reason. The pain disappeared. All the noise faded. All she could see was this perfect little girl lying on her chest, warm and real and full of life, her daughter, her miracle. Adaobi began to sob again, but this time it wasn't sadness. It was something else, something deeper, something healing. She wrapped her arms around her baby, held her close, kissed her forehead again and again. Her heart, so broken just hours ago, felt full for the first time in months. You're here, she whispered. My baby, you're really here. The baby squirmed a little, letting out another tiny cry, and Adaobi smiled through her tears. You are all I need, she said, her voice shaking. Just you, that's enough. In that moment, the lies didn't matter. The betrayal didn't matter. Ebuka's absence, the pain of being left alone, the loneliness, it all faded away. Because in her arms was the one person who would never leave her, the one who would love her without conditions, the one who made everything worth it. She looked at her daughter's eyes, still trying to open, still getting used to the world, and she whispered again, I promise you, Chisholm, I will protect you. I will raise you with love. I will never let you feel alone. You will never feel what I felt. The nurse brought a soft blanket and wrapped the baby gently, placing her back in Adaobi's arm. The new mother looked tired, drained, but something had changed in her eyes. There was a quiet fire, a strength. Adaobi kissed her baby's cheek and closed her eyes. She was no longer just a woman who had been betrayed. She was a mother, and that changed everything. It started with a photo, just one picture, a blurry image taken at another hospital, showing Ebuka sitting beside a visibly pregnant woman, holding her hand and smiling proudly like the perfect partner. Someone posted it on Facebook, and within hours, it spread like wildfire. Adaobi saw it by accident, She was breastfeeding Chisholm when her cousin sent her a message. I don't want to upset you, but you need to see this. At first, she didn't want to look. Her heart had already been through enough, but curiosity won. She opened the link, and there he was. Ibuka, the same man who hadn't picked up her calls when she went into labor, the same man who missed the birth of his daughter, the same man who told her she was paranoid. There he was, smiling, looking proud, rubbing another woman's belly in a hospital waiting room. The caption read, "Love lives here. Countdown to baby number 2. Some people in the comments were congratulating him. Others were confused. Then the truth started unfolding. Someone else shared another photo. This time, clearer. Same woman, same hospital. A nurse in the background confirmed the date. It was last week, right when Adaobi was crying alone in her hospital bed. By the next day, the story had spread all over Onitsha. People were shocked. Friends, neighbors, even church members. Everyone was talking. People who once looked up to Ibuka as the ideal husband were now calling him names. Some tried to defend him. Others dragged him without mercy. Adaobi didn't say a word. People started calling her, messaging her. Some apologized for not believing her when she said things were off. Some begged her to speak up, to expose him. But Adaobi stayed silent. She didn't need to say anything. The truth had already shouted louder than any words she could have spoken. The betrayal that had once been a private wound was now a public shame. Not hers, his. She watched it all quietly, holding her daughter close, her face calm but unreadable. She no longer felt the need to scream or cry, or explain herself to anyone. For so long, people had doubted her, told her she was imagining things, blamed her for being emotional. But now they knew, they saw, and that was enough, for now. Ibuka didn't call. Maybe he was too embarrassed. Maybe he thought she wouldn't find out. Or maybe deep down, he knew he had already lost her. That evening, as the sun set, Adaobi sat by the window with Chisholm in her arm. She looked out at the street below, where kids were playing and people were going about their lives, unaware of the storm she had survived. She rocked her baby gently and whispered, "Let them talk. Let the truth do what it does." And then she smiled, not because she was okay, not yet, but because something inside her had shifted. She didn't need revenge. Not yet. The world had started to see the truth for themselves. And sometimes, silence is the loudest answer. Months passed. Adaobi was no longer the broken woman who cried alone in her hospital bed. She had healed slowly, one day at a time, feeding her daughter, watching her grow, and reminding herself that she deserved better. She didn't just survive, she transformed. Instead of staying bitter, Adaobi turned her pain into purpose. She used her story, her strength, and her love for Chisholm to launch a non-profit for abandoned pregnant women. She named it Chisholm's Haven, after the little girl who saved her. The group helped women who had been left by their partners just like her, giving them shelter, food, and support during their most vulnerable moments. People were inspired. Women from all over shared their stories. Adaobi became a quiet hero, not by talking too much, but by doing what mattered. She didn't drag Ibuka's name through the mud. She didn't post rants online. She let her work speak for her, and it spoke loudly. Then one afternoon, Ibuka showed up. He looked tired, nervous, full of regret. He stood at her doorstep, looking at the baby girl he had once ignored, and then looked at Adaobi. "I made a mistake," he said, voice shaking. "Please, can we start over?" Adaobi didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just looked at him with calm eyes, reached into her folder, and handed him a brown envelope. Divorce paper, signed, stamped, done. She said nothing, just turned, picked up her daughter, and walked back into her home, the one she built without him. That was her revenge. Not anger, not insults, just healing, power, and peace.